Hello and welcome to the Take Pride in Your Equality Rights discussion panel. What a year it has been, some massive achievements. The first same-sex marriages have taken place, there's been the lifting on donating blood by gay men, all things to celebrate massive achievements that we didn't even think would come in the near future. But it also gives rise to some things that maybe are emerging that we need to use our energies now to move on and face those new challenges. The Equality Commission is actually here to promote equality and to challenge discrimination. We promote equality through policy work and events like today where we listen to the questions that you've posed to us and we try to get some experts to share their views on how they might be addressed. Challenging discrimination, however, is a little bit more difficult. We do that through our legal processes, where we work with people who have suffered discrimination or believe that they have suffered discrimination to find remedies for that. We use that casework to promote what's happening, to raise awareness and hopefully make life better for everybody else. So I want to introduce you to my panel today. I have Gavin Boyd with me. Hello, Gavin, who is the Policy and Advocacy Manager for the Rainbow Project. And I have Anne McKernan, who is the Director of Legal Services with the Equality Commission. We should have been joined today by Kieran Moyne from Phoenix Law. Unfortunately, Kieran did get called away at very short notice and rather unexpectedly. So he sends his apologies for today and wishes you the best for what you might learn from this and how the panel might take the issues forward. So over to our panel. I'm going to allow you to introduce yourselves, tell our audience who you are and how they might contact you in the future, depending on what we discussed today. So Gavin, you first.
Thanks very much, and thanks to the Equality Commission for inviting me here to be part of this discussion during Rights Week and during what is an online Pride season this year because of COVID as well. And while it's been a challenging time, it's been really useful to have these kind of different conversations, these different forums, and to allow people to participate in Pride in different ways. And so I certainly appreciate the opportunity. I suppose for anyone who doesn't know, the role of the Rainbow Project is to promote the health and well-being of people who are lesbian, gay, bi or trans and their families in Northern Ireland. My colleagues in the services team provide a range of health and wellbeing services from counselling, sexual health testing, hate crime and homelessness advocacy, and peer and social support just to reduce feelings of isolation and build a sense of community and solidarity across Northern Ireland. And my role as the Policy and Advocacy Manager is to find ways to better understand the needs, the aspirations of LGBT people across Northern Ireland and to find ways to translate that into asks of government and to hold government to account for its accomplishments and its failures to promote equality of opportunity for LGBT people.
A busy workload, Gavin.
It keeps me busy. It's been 10 years now, but as we can see, we're starting to see really big achievements coming to the fore. I think for a lot of LGBT people, it can be frustrating to live with a slow pace of change in Northern Ireland. And it's important for us to say that there's never been a better time to be LGBT in Northern Ireland than right now. We're achieving things all the time, but that means that we still have to keep the momentum going forward until equality is felt by every member of our community.
Indeed, our own sort of last surveys that we've carried out in terms of people's attitudes have shown that there has been an easing of attitudes, a better attitude towards LGBT people. And trans people, unfortunately, it's just not coming along just as quickly?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that it's been a very challenging time for trans people and allies of trans people across the UK over the past number of years. It's been an unfortunately hostile media environment for a lot of trans people, a lot of misrepresentation, antagonistic campaigning, and I think trans people are feeling the weight of being singled out in that way. And I think it's unfortunate then to see the contrast for lesbian, gay and bisexual people who have achieved a certain level of social acceptability, of recognition for their experiences. But that's why it's even more important for us now to make sure that we pull up the trans members of our community and ensure that equality is not just something that's left for those of us who are conceived to be acceptable.
Yeah, I agree. Anne, do you want to tell the audience about yourself?
Yes, and hello to everybody that's watching. My name is Anne McKernan and I'm the Director in Legal Services in the Equality Commission. And Legal Services Directorate is very busy with a lot of different things. Sexual orientation has been one of our big areas of work over the last years. We still get small numbers of complaints, I have to say, and I would hope that people who are listening to this will think about ways in which the Equality Commission might be able to help them as individuals. I think that's a really important thing. You know, we often talk about the policies and the procedures and so on, but the team that I'm working in really is focused on the rights of individuals and the experiences of individuals in the workplace, in services, in education and health and so forth. I'd really like to, I suppose, encourage people, if they feel that they've been in any way discriminated against, that they feel they can lift the phone and ask for some advice and consider the options that they have in front of them. I think it was very interesting to listen to the conversation you were having just now, particularly around the issues of trans people. And some will have seen in the press recently that we had a very successful outcome in a trans case recently. And I think these sorts of things do give visibility to issues. But the important thing underlying all of that, I think, for the individual who is having a really tough time is that sense of, can I talk to somebody confidentially? Can I explore what the options might be for me, rather than worrying about getting stuck straight into a case or something like that. So I know there have been some questions have come in online on that, and I'd be very happy to address all of those. Okay. Delighted, absolutely delighted to be involved in this online Pride event.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Anne. Listen, I said at the beginning about the fact that same-sex marriages are now acceptable in Northern Ireland, and good to see. Mm-hmm. But what about those who are in civil partnerships? What about the conversion process? What are your views on that?
I mean, conversion is one of those outstanding issues from the Equal Marriage campaign, and I think it was interesting whenever the law came into force in February, and suddenly we were getting media contacts from around the world, people wanting to interview couples who are getting married. And the problem that we had was that most of the people in Northern Ireland who want to be in same-sex marriages are currently in civil partnerships. And so there wasn't this flurry of people getting married because they were kind of locked into these civil partnerships. And obviously Robin and Sharni, the first couple to get married, that was an amazing day, and I was very fortunate to be there and to support them on that day. But it is still one of those really important issues that we need Westminster, we need the Northern Ireland office to make good on their commitment and to follow through on the instruction which was given by Parliament to ensure that everyone in Northern Ireland has the ability to enter a marriage if that's what they want to do. Now, the commitment is that the process for converting civil partnerships to marriages will be in place by the end of this year, and I think for those of us who are involved in the campaign, it'll be our responsibility to ensure that we hold the Northern Ireland office and the UK government to its word on that, and to ensure that the ability for people to enter into a marriage and to convert their partnership to a marriage is something that needs to be upheld and celebrated.
Yeah, I know the consultation process on government's consultation has closed, and they plan to have some kind of an announcement or statement made towards the end of the year. Time's running out, but let's hope it's positive. Absolutely. But what about those couples who want to get married in church? Sure. What's the position there?
It's a little bit, I suppose, of a mixed bag. For those of us who are involved in the campaign, ensuring religious freedom was a really important way of commanding the respect of the population of Northern Ireland, that nothing was going to be forced on religious communities that they didn't want. At the same time, we know that there are religious celebrants who really, really wanted to be able to conduct same-sex marriages and who were vocal and active members of the campaign. And so the position that the law is for Northern Ireland is that the governing bodies of denominations, of faith groups, have the ability to opt in to the marriage process, to register themselves as places where people can get married in a same-sex relationship. And there are a number of those religious organisations across Northern Ireland that are now able to provide those marriages, and that's a really good thing.
Yeah, so would the Rainbow Project have details of those who are willing to officiate at such services? For those who have let us know that that's something that they want to do, so like the All Souls non-subscribing Presbyterian Church on Elmwood Avenue would be one of those churches that would be available for same-sex couples, and there are a number across. So if people want to explore that, absolutely get in contact with us and we can support them. I know from some of the comments and the questions that have been submitted to us for today's event that there have been a few who've been asking very much about specific churches.
Sure.
So if they contact you, maybe they can get some more information in that regard.
Absolutely, we can talk them through the options.
Okay. Well, look, some of the other issues that were asked for you to discuss today really focused around sort of work and harassment. And I know, Anne, that's one of your issues that you have talked to our audience about. So can you maybe give a little bit of advice in terms of people who are maybe being exposed to homophobic language in the workplace, or behaviours that are making them feel isolated, without going into the details of the issues that have been submitted to us?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is one of the big issues, really. It's what we see and hear very frequently, I have to say. Everyday homophobic language, simply accepted and tolerated in circumstances where it simply should not be, particularly in workplaces which should have equal opportunities policies, dignity at work policies, and so on. And homophobic language is no more acceptable than racist language would be. So I do think that, you know, if you look at harassment, right? So the whole concept of harassment really is focused on unwanted conduct, and that could be a whole raft of things. It could be the things that people say. I know that we've had people coming into us about, you know, graffiti on lockers. It could be, you know, a whole number of things that have the really effect of impacting on somebody's dignity, in creating an environment that is hostile, intimidating, degrading, and so forth, right? So, you know, I would say to people where they're experiencing problems like this in the workplace, do please challenge your employer about this. Now, I know for some people they feel like, oh, that's easy for you to say. You know, it's actually can be a very difficult thing for me to know exactly what to do here. And we would have quite a few people who will ring the Equality Commission and just have a discussion with an advisor in the first instance. What are my rights? Do you think I can complain about this? How might I complain about it? Who would support me? Would I take somebody with me to complain, and so on? So certainly I think the first thing is, if you are in a situation where the sorts of treatment and behaviour of you feel is harassing you, then you do not have to put up with this. We're very happy to talk to people about how they might go about challenging it, about how you might try to resolve any problems informally. And of course, you do know that we have had some cases, and there's clear case law in respect of this. And really, if at the very end of any kind of attempts at resolution, there is the option of recourse to legal action. But I would think that that should always be really the last option for people. It's about, and you'll know this, Gavin, it's about people feeling confident and secure in their identity and not being harassed by anyone, not feeling that they simply have to roll over and take this, not feeling like it's just simply a bit of banter and it doesn't matter. It is unlawful. Yeah. And certainly, and it is certainly challengeable. Yeah. So
a lot of people actually have a fear of raising it with their employer, because of what the potential outcomes might be within the workplace. Fear of escalation of the bad treatment. Gavin, have you had any people coming to the Rainbow Project, or do you know of anyone coming to the Rainbow Project? And how would you advise them?
Well, I mean, I think anyone who comes to us with a concern or complaint about their employer, we always signpost them on to the Equality Commission as the authority that has the power and the resources to be able to work with employers to resolve a dispute. I think what we see a lot in employment scenarios is that people are more likely to hear anti-LGBT language if they're not out in the workplace, and people feel emboldened to make anti-LGBT comments when they think that there's no one in the room. And so I think how we think that employers should react proactively to experiences of homophobia, transphobia in the workplaces is to create an environment, a working environment where people can be out. And they need to think about how they induct new employees into an organisation, how they explain the values of an organisation, what's acceptable behaviour within an organisation. And there's so much support that's available for employers out there, either through the Equality Commission or through our partners in Stonewall, who delivered the Employment Equality Project in Northern Ireland. So there's advice, there's resources, and there's ongoing support from ourselves and our partners to employers to make all places of work places which are welcoming for LGBT people.
And the Commission has a number of articles on its own website that can give advice and guidance to anyone who's suffering that kind of treatment. No one should suffer it. You're not alone. So if you need some more advice, contact the Equality Commission, look at our website, and you'll get whatever information that you need there. And if you don't, lift the phone, talk to someone. There's always someone here to help out. But leading on from that, people who are in the workplace and suffering bullying behaviour, it's often been a continuation on from their school days, being bullied in the schools. And I know that you have done a lot, Gavin, in relation to bullying and education in general.
Sure.
What kind of advice could you give, or what kind of work have you been involved in that would help people in that kind of situation?
Well, I think the primary role that I've had over the past number of years to work on education issues is to get the experiences of LGBT young people recognised. I think one of the biggest problems for a long time was they were just invisible to the Department of Education, to schools themselves, and to different organisations that interact with those young people. And when we successfully got the Department of Education to commission research into the experiences of LGBT young people, I think some of the outcomes of that research were really stark and reflect a systemic problem with not responding to the needs of LGBT young people. So if the Department of Education's own research says that almost half, 45% of LGBT young people don't feel safe when they're in school, that's a systemic problem, and it needs a systemic response. So we've got resources for schools. We can provide training for teachers in how to create LGBT affirming learning environments, how to respond effectively to homophobic or transphobic bullying incidences, and how to give young people, when they're at that time when they're maybe questioning or coming to terms with their sexual orientation or their gender, an ability to talk to other young people who are going through similar experiences, to talk to teachers who are trained in how best to respond to those needs, and to make sure that when a child is going to school, a place where they are required to be, which educates them about who they are and their role within society and gives them aspirations for the future, that's a safe and welcoming learning environment. I think that's a bare minimum that every child should feel when they go to school.
I know that some parents have contacted the Commission concerned about the fact that their child or young person has come out, has told others, their friends, what's happening in their lives, and they're concerned about bullying of their child.
Yeah.
What can they do? How can they, as parents, be supported and be supportive of not just their child but also the school? Sure.
So I think what's really important for parents when they have those concerns about their child, to have a good and frank and honest conversation with their child about that as well, so that the child knows that if they're experiencing harassment, bullying, intimidation, whatever it is in school, to know that in the first instance that they can talk to their parents about that. Because so many of the children that we work with are so fearful of being judged or treated differently that they hold their experiences in and direct them at themselves rather than seek a resolution. I think in the second instance, I think it's important for parents to let a school know what their concerns are. And I have explained to parents in the past to talk to the school and say, I expect my child to be safe when they go to this school. If my child isn't safe when they're here, I need you to have a plan in place as to how you're going to correct their experiences. And I think it's important for schools to anticipate the reality that they will have LGBT pupils, not to wait until a child comes out and try to create a solution around the individual experience of that child, but to think ahead and think, how will we create a welcoming and affirming school community where all children, regardless of who they are, can feel welcome and feel the ability to learn and meet their potential without feeling fear of rejection.
I think it's really important. And do you know if the Commission has had any experience of bullying in schools?
I mean, it's not a query that we would probably get as often as the Rainbow Project would get that. But I mean, I think there's a couple of interesting things really coming out of this. I mean, that is very interesting, Gavin, as you're saying. The important thing is that a child is safe in school, and that school should be anticipating that there will be LGBT pupils in that school. That's something that really sort of changes the whole environment and climate for children in the school. I mean, sorts of issues that we might get might be around issues on the admissions policy, issues around potential exclusions, and so, you know, on curriculum issues and so on and so forth. So I do think it's important that the children feel included, that parents feel secure that their children are safe actually whenever they go to school, and certainly the idea that you should have the conversation with the child, but also with the school, and to actually resolve problems before they become entrenched. I think that's really a big issue.
So would you advise parents to communicate with the school at the earliest possible stage, even before others would know that their child is potentially LGBT?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if a parent has any concerns about the safety or the affirmation that their child experiences in school, it's best to raise that with the school at the earliest possible opportunity, so that plans can be put in place to support that child's well-being. And I think also that the parents need support as well. This can be a really stressful and really worrying time for parents. And one of the services that we offer is a support group for parents, because oftentimes parents can have a tough time coming to terms with their child coming out. Like if you've known someone from the day and hour that they were born, you have all these expectations and plans in your head as to what their life is going to be, and suddenly you can be confronted with a whole different life for this child. And oftentimes what parents don't need is someone like me coming in and saying, but listen, being gay is awesome. But actually maybe what they do need is a parent who's been through the exact same experience and who can walk with them in their journey towards acceptance. And so for any parent who's worried about their child's experience, absolutely contact us. We can support you. We can put you in contact with parents who can support you as well.
So is it that kind of support network of parents who are in the same sort of situation who can walk together, as it were?
Absolutely. And I think an emerging population as well is same-sex couples raising children, and the concerns that they have that their family will be discussed in a poor light when their children go to school as well. So one of the things that we do is to have a network of new parents who are in same-sex couples, so that they can support each other, so that their children see other families that have two mums and two dads, because that just increases the resilience that a child has to not feel so isolated when they're the only one with two mums or two dads.
Just on that subject, and still staying with schools, over the past year, 12 months or so, there's been a lot of media coverage about parents in England particularly objecting to the curriculum in primary schools, for example, where kids are being taught about families that are same-sex. What's the situation here, and what would your advice be to those parents generally whose kids are going to be taught about the issue of relationships?
Sure, I think so. We get contacted regularly enough from primary school teachers to ask how can we talk about these issues in a child-centered, age-appropriate way. And the best way to do that is using storybooks. And there are some really amazing books out there. There's one that's called Mommy, Mama and Me. There's Untangle Makes Three, which is about two male penguins who adopted an abandoned egg in New York Zoo. And I think the concerns that people have come from a misrepresentation of what we're actually talking about. If we're talking about primary school kids, really the only thing that they need to know about same-sex couples is that they exist. Is that some kids have two mums and some kids have two dads, and that's important for all children to know, that families come in all shapes and sizes, and that the thing that makes a family is love. And then as children grow older, as they go into secondary school and they learn about relationships and the qualities of a good and healthy and safe relationship, it's important to know that that can be two men and two women as well. How to measure risk, how to gauge an unhealthy relationship, what to do if you feel like you're in an unhealthy relationship, so that children and young people are armed with the skills and the resources and the confidence to be able to enter into the relationships that are right for them, and not to feel trapped within a relationship because they don't know how to get out of it.
After all, like, family life is about love and support, somewhere where you feel safe. And that's what we really should be teaching all our children about, regardless of how that family is structured.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think so much of the fear is based around just a not reality. It's just not what we see. Like if we're talking about primary schools, it's really just talking about families and for people to see the diversity of families that exist out there.
I think that's really important. But after all, this discussion really is about rights and informing people about rights. And one area where I know the Commission has received some calls about has been in accessing services. And I know one of the callers in with questions before the programme started was about how people, and particularly in housing, where they have a fear of if their landlord or whatever might become aware of the fact that they're gay. Can you sort of summarise what rights people have in terms of access to services, regardless of their sexuality?
Well, certainly goods, facilities and services are covered under the legislation. Sometimes people hear an awful lot of stuff about rights in the workplace and they think discrimination has just got to do with work. But all sorts of services are included, and housing being one of those as well. So I know that we did have a query from a caller to say, oh, what if my landlord finds out I'm gay, I might be evicted. I mean, that's packed with a lot of assumptions in there as well, because of course the landlord might be perfectly happy and at ease with that, and it might be reflecting a bit of an insecurity of the person themselves. On the other hand, perhaps, there's been some engagement with the landlord that has made the person not feel so secure about their position. Now, you certainly cannot be evicted because you're gay, and and anything of that nature could be challenged. Of course, you can be evicted, for all sorts of other reasons. So, I would say to a caller who has got concerns about that, if they would like to contact the telephone helpline, we can obviously discuss through with them. I think the law in regard to those services is clear. There is an exemption with regard to housing, specifically if it's small dwelling, in other words, typically where the housing accommodation, the person who owns the house and is the landlord as such, as it's their home, so there's some small exemptions around that, but generally speaking, people should be able to feel secure in their tenancies, and that their sexual orientation will not be a factor in that at all. So again, I would say if someone has some concerns around all of that, call a helpline. We'll have some advisors will be able to help you about that.
I think one of the things that we've noticed a lot, certainly since the start of lockdown, is not necessarily fears of discrimination in the provision of housing, but a rise in neighbour disputes. And particularly for a lot of our trans clients, that they can experience a lot of harassment and intimidation in and around their home. And it's important for LGBT people, and I think particularly for trans people, to know that you have the right to feel safe and secure in your home. And if whether a neighbour or other people in the community are making you feel unsafe when you're in your home, it's important for you to report those experiences to the police. And if people don't feel comfortable reporting that to the PSNI, they can report it to our advocacy service. We can make the report on their behalf, and we can support them through that process as well.
Yeah, just when you mention reporting incidents to the police, I know trends for both hate crime and incidents are actually rising, despite the fact that maybe attitude surveys are showing that people's attitudes are getting better. So there's a bit of an anomaly there.
Sure.
And it's quite obvious that incidents and actual crimes are probably not being reported as they actually happen. So the figures are maybe telling a false story.
Sure.
What more can be done? What more do you think we could do, that the Rainbow Project can do, or anyone else, in terms of supporting people who have been the subject of those incidents or crimes? How can we support them actually stand up and say, whoa, hold on a minute, I need help here?
I think that's the important part of it, is to encourage people to recognise that they have the right to feel safe in their home. homophobic and transphobic crimes have been so underreported for such a longer period of time, because unfortunately for a lot of LGBT people, they think that experiencing harassment is part and parcel of being LGBT, and that there's an acceptable level of prejudice that you're just supposed to suffer through. And I would commend the PSNI for the work that they've done in encouraging reporting. When we see an increase in reporting, we actually consider that to be a positive, because it means that people then have the confidence in the police to make a report in the first place. I think what is a little bit concerning for us this year is that we've seen, while an kind of overall increase in reporting, an increase in physical assaults, which is more of a concern for us. And we would maybe tie that into COVID and the close living quarters that people are having, that rise in neighbour disputes that can escalate. But I think for all service providers, it's just really important to continue that message that you don't have to put up with this, that there are avenues and organisations who are there to support you. And it's really important that we have a good and clear and accurate picture of what the experiences of people are, because it's only when people are registering their complaints with the police that we have who can respond to the issues, because if people don't report, then their issues aren't visible, and so are they.
So do you have an advocacy role that works with victims to actually approach the police, to report the crime and support them through that reporting process?
That's right. So it's actually funded by the PSNI. So if a victim reports a crime to the police will ask them if they would like advocacy support, and then we can follow up with the victim, or they can make a complaint directly to ourselves. Also important to say that if people have had negative experiences with the PSNI, that we can support them through a police ombudsman investigation, or we can resolve complaints directly with the police, because there's still learning for everyone to do, and police, with the best will in the world, sometimes still make mistakes.
Yeah, we're all human after all.
Absolutely.
But we're coming towards the end of our time period. But there's one important thing I want to get your views on, and there's been much talk about it over a long period of time, and that's sexual orientation strategy.
Sure.
Will we have one? What should be in it? What will be in it? What do you hope will be in it? Gavin, your views?
I hope that we have one. I think that we need one. I think that we need a joined up cross-departmental strategy to address the inequalities that are experienced by people with minority sexual orientations in Northern Ireland. If only to put it on a par with the other all the other Section 75 groups, to make sure that it is recognised across departments that there are issues here which need to be resolved. I think one of the problems that we've had for such a long period of time is that we have relied on the luck of the draw as to which minister is in which department, and we might get progress in one policy area while we just have to let another policy area go, and I don't think that's acceptable. There have been government commitments for, I think, about 8 years to introduce a sexual orientation strategy, and really it just needs to be done, because the longer that sexual orientation and gender issues are seen to be not capable of being progressed through the Northern Ireland Assembly, it eats away at the credibility of the institutions. I think it was very interesting that when the institutions collapsed in 2017, there was no clamour from the community to have the institutions back, and that's a problem. We should have people feel like they have a sense that the Northern Ireland Assembly and the departments exist to improve their lives. And if politicians want to maintain the public trust, then they have to be seen to deliver for people. I think it'll be a test of this new executive to see whether or not it can sign off on a sexual orientation strategy, because if it can't, that says something very negative about the ability for LGBT people to be recognised and to have their needs met by this government.
I know it's a commitment within the new agreement, and let's hope that it will be delivered as the document would suggest in terms of the programme for government, where it's going to be co-designed and co-produced and everyone can buy into it. And in terms of the Equality Commission, has it set a policy position in relation and recommendations as to what it might like to see contained within such a strategy?
Yeah, I mean, the question at the outset, I suppose, Geraldine, was should there be one? And absolutely there should, and we need to see that sort of sooner rather than later, really, you know. So I think the important thing is that a strategy is focused on improving the lives of LGBT people in Northern Ireland, that it's actually based on the views of those people and following all the consultation, everything that we've looked at as well, that it is supported by an action plan, and that's supported by a budget. So I do think, you know, so we want a real focus, and I think then it's, you know, it's looking at you know, how these things are picked up in other jurisdictions and so on. We've talked about some of the issues here, so a focus, it seems to me, on health, a focus on education, a focus on safety. You know, we were sort of some of the things that we've been talking about today. Just interesting to hear how much safety comes up as an issue, really, and all of that sort of thing, you know. So I do think that it is something that we must continue to press for. I'd be very optimistic, you know, that we will get there sooner than later. But hey, let's see.
Yeah. Well, I think we all have to be optimistic, but let's hope that it is not just a document with words and aspirations, but it has an action plan that is robust, properly resourced and properly committed to right across the political spectrum. I think so many people tend to forget that maybe Section 75 also includes sexual orientation, and it's been there from the very beginning. So let's hope this time next year when we're sitting talking, we'll be not talking about same-sex marriages, but we're talking about how the sexual orientation strategy is actually delivering and how the outcomes are being delivered. Anyway, really, that's all we have time for today, unfortunately. We were inundated with a wide range of questions, many of which were on similar themes. We've tried to group those together, and whilst we've kept specifics out of the question, I hope you've been able to see that your question has been addressed. If we haven't touched on the issue that was really important to you, please make contact with either Gavin or Anne, and we will certainly talk you through how we might be able to help you and support you and advise you of what your rights are. I know Kieran would be very disappointed not to have been here, and he would have had a wealth of experience that he could have shared with all of us. We probably would have been sitting talking for the next half hour, but anyway, Kieran unfortunately couldn't make it. So can I just thank you for tuning in and hope that we've been of some advice to you. Need any more information? Go to the Rainbow Project, go to the Equality Commission. All of the information is on our website, and I'm sure it is for the Rainbow Project also. So can I just thank you, my panel, for joining me today and for engaging with the issue.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Geraldine. Thank you.